And we are back, obviously, and I say we because in studio with me right now is Anthony Baney, and I did say that correct, right? You actually probably don't even need it because it's just me and you right now, so you don't have to worry about that part. But let me make sure your mic's on. There you go, and you can even talk right now.
Yeah, I'm definitely Anthony Baney, and you did pronounce that correctly. Thank you.
Okay. I looked at the first email and it just said Anthony on it, so I'm like, ah!
But you can't forget Baney. Baney is Gaelic for breath of life.
I did not know that. Thank you for educating me. And actually, every time, now, if you've listened to this, well, actually not this time slot, because we used to have a different one, but if you've listened to me back when we did the Buffalo, God, what was Sarah's show?
All Talk Radio, I believe.
It was All Talk Buffalo. All Talk Buffalo. Anthony was on air many times, and he's actually made it in once before on this particular show when it was at its 1 o'clock time frame. And
thank you for having me on.
Hey, I appreciate it. And it's always an education for me. Obviously, we all know where I stand a little bit on that right-hand side, and I love hearing from people that don't. Because, as I've always said, it is nobody's right. We have to find a way to work within the rightness of both of us. Rightness of the left and right, yes. And to come up with a good middle ground. Because if you think about everything in life, it's all about moderation. And
especially moderation,
and you got to get out and have some fun. But on the same token, you got to be safe. You have some control to it too. Otherwise, you end up hurting yourself. And so that's why I look at it as yes, we have two sides. So every thought, because we do, and both sides are right and both sides are wrong. It's a matter of coming into that middle ground. So I love having Anthony come in and talk to me about not so much the middle ground, but that lefter side. He's a very intelligent individual. So, I'm not going to say to prove it, he's running for office, but actually it seems like that's the anti proof, but he's running for office. He's here to discuss some things looks like that Push Green are doing. And actually going to just kind of step back for just a moment and say, hey, how you doing?
Well, thank you, Michael. I mean, you're obviously an intelligent being, too, so I do agree that we need to have these conversations. It doesn't matter what side of the aisle you are on. We're all human. We all need to have these conversations. My name is Anthony Baney, and I'll be running for the Assembly District in 140. So that is the current seat that Ramin Shiminger has. My main platform is legalizing cannabis. We need to reform the criminal justice system. Primarily, my issue is legalizing cannabis and the decriminalization aspect. If you look at all of the nonviolent drug offenses, cannabis is actually the one that most people get arrested for. And that's not only just nonviolent drug offenses, but nonviolent offenses altogether. So, there's a lot of issues regarding cannabis that we're actually going to be addressing at the 420 Freedom Festival, which will be at Delaware Park on April 20th. Which is a Wednesday. We're doing that from 4 o'clock to 8 o'clock. Also, schools are a huge issue on my campaign. We want to make sure that public schools are fully funded and that charter schools don't get the public funds that the public schools need and are being cut out on. Another issue is alternative energy. I definitely need to focus on the fact that we consume too many fossil fuels, and we need to, as a society, limit how much we consume of energy, but also how we produce that energy is a factor also. There's a lot to cover in issues regarding Western New York specifically in terms of the environment, especially the Huntley plant. The Huntley plant produces coal and is going to leave behind some contaminated coal ash sites, fly coal ash. So there's a lot of issues locally, but my main issue is legalizing cannabis because I see the criminal justice system as being very prejudiced and biased against minorities.
Now, I know we can't wave a magic wand and make the legal system not be prejudiced. That's something that's going to take time and is being worked on. There's, because there's other areas, because of the way we see it in other things that some of these prejudices have been developed. But is that the only reason? It's not just because you want it legalized, not because of the legal system, but just in general too, don't you? Are we looking at just medical? Are we talking recreational? What are you talking about in that area?
I mean, with cannabis, there are many issues, like you said, with medical, with the fact that we arrest too many minorities. I mean, there's even the environmental aspect that we could grow hemp and not rely on fossil fuels because hemp can be converted into a biogasoline. So, I mean, there's a lot of issues. My reason for tackling it on the criminal justice reform side is that the criminal justice system is not working. And when the criminal justice system is not working, people will take justice into their own hands, and that is not a good thing. The Buffalo cannabis movement goes from all angles. The reason I target the criminal justice system is because we need a criminal justice system. We need to make sure that people who are actually causing detriment to society are rehabilitated and become actual citizens. If we don't have that, then you're going to see, your economy go down with people not being able to get jobs because they're constantly going in and out of jail. So, I mean, it also plays into other factors of society, too.
I guess one thing that I think people need to understand, because a lot of times, and I'm not going to bring about any candidates or followers of that person, we hear certain statements like that and instantly get thrown into this tizzy and downward spiral. Now, you're still saying we need to have a justice system of some form.
Absolutely.
And you're also saying that, there needs to be some form of penalty for committing crimes.
Oh, absolutely. If it has a detriment on society, as long as you're not harming, as long as you're harming somebody else and you're not harming yourself, then, yeah, you should definitely have some kind of consequences because you need to be rehabilitated.
Exactly. We're not talking, we're not talking about releasing serial killers into the, the general population here. Now, I guess one
and the
thing,
funny thing is that a lot of resources that police put towards investigating drugs is taking away from the investigations of murder.
Yes.
How many unsolved murders are there in Buffalo? But the police are right there when there's a drug crime.
Exactly. And now, okay, let's if we got rid of things such as, if we made it legal, obviously we have Colorado and Washington.
Alaska and Washington, D.C., actually our capital.
Okay. I knew there was 4. I was just trying to remember what the other 2 were. And we start seeing some things that are coming from. Now, I have noticed some medical issues coming out of Colorado. The first medical issue was, this is not your grandfather's pot.
So you're talking about THC concentrations.
Yes, and people that are coming in from out of state are inhaling a little too deeply, and they're ending up in hospitals.
Now, are these short-term effects or are they long-term effects?
This particular one is short-term. Obviously,
Yeah,
you're in a
absolutely.
hospital.
Mm-hmm.
But it does kind of, we talk about, can you OD on THC? And you can, but it takes a lot.
It's not feasible. It's not feasible. You would literally have to consume 1,500 grams in 15 minutes. You would have to consume 1,500 pounds in 15 minutes. You literally have to consume 15 times your body weight in 15 minutes. It's just not feasible.
I guess OD is probably not the wrong, was probably the wrong term. They're not like dying of an
smoke,
overdose.
because once you eat, you have to understand that there's THCA, which is non-psychoactive. You have to add combustion to get the THC derivatives into your body.
Okay.
So you could eat tons of cannabis and not have effects.
Right.
You have to have the combustion. The THC has to be conformed, or it has to change from THCA to THC, which you need the combustion to do that. You need heat. It has to be heat activated.
Okay.
So, if you consume 5,000 grams of sugar, what do you think the effects of that will be?
A Saturday.
No, in an hour? In an hour?
What's getting these people into the hospitals, though?
Yeah, like I said, there can be some psychological effects that happen. The same thing can be said about coffee. You have to be responsible. Yeah, you have to be responsible with coffee. You have to be responsible with cannabis. You have to be responsible with cigarettes. You have to be responsible with alcohol. You have to be responsible with anything you put in your body. Like you're talking about moderation. Now, I knew a gentleman who drank a ton of coffee every day, and he went out for his morning run, and he had a heart attack on his lawn, because he was not hydrating himself.
Right.
So there are certain things we have to be responsible with ourselves. Now, this is a 50-year-old man.
Yeah,
You're probably talking about college students.
I don't know what you can't say that because it's not just college students that are going out to Colorado and having a smoke.
That's fair. But I would say that it's generally people who are not habitual users.
I'm willing to bet there's a lot of Vietnam vets out there right now. Okay.
But from what I've heard, because I have heard in media those stories, and a lot of it is treats because, like I said, it has to be heat activated. So when you consume treats, you don't know exactly how much is going to be metabolized in your body.
Okay.
Because everybody's body's different.
Right. Yeah, somewhere along the way, at some point in time, I was going to actually ask you, because that question came, this is how I think. My question was going to be, everyone talks about the brownies, and, if it had to be, on lit, how would that work? But we can probably hold off on that one unless you really want to go over it.
And I mean, think about it like this, though. The dispensaries are going to tell you how much you should take, generally. And I mean, it's on your individual responsibility to, to take what they've... I mean, I don't know if they actually make a recommendation, but I'm sure the person at the dispensary is going to tell you, hey, these treats are going to make you feel this way. It's probably not a good idea to consume the whole bag.
Probably not.
Yeah, but sometimes people might eat a couple, not feel the effects because your body has to metabolize it as opposed to smoking where you feel it right away, and they might consume that whole bag.
Right. The same thing goes with alcohol, too. Mm-hmm. Yeah, I don't know about you, but there's some out there that people can have like one or two. I'm like, I'm fine. They have that third one. They go to stand up, and they instantly hit the ground. It's along the same lines, it sounds like.
Yeah, and I mean, a lot of college students have to get their stomachs pumped, and I mean, they have to figure out where that balance is. Mm-hmm. And I mean, the thing is, if you have an illegal market, then you have people that are now pushing treats where they have no idea how much THC is in there, and now you have no standard for somebody at a dispensary to say, hey, you shouldn't eat that whole bag.
Right.
I mean, a drug dealer doesn't care. He's looking out there for the money.
Exactly.
So, I mean, I think it's better to have a market where you can at least have the private industry look at the negatives that are coming out and then fix it based upon that, because they don't want to have, commercials running of people being introduced to hospitals all the time from overdosing. I mean, and that's where the private industry does a better job.
Okay. Now let's continue on with this. Now we talk about if I don't know if this was actually what I planned on just being the whole half hour for, but we're here, so let's go with it. We can always bring you back other days, that's for sure.
Yeah, I mean, if you want to talk about the medical program, I mean, the medical program is crazy.
Well, actually, I'm going to stay more on the legal side. Okay. So if we legalize it, now, one of the reasons why it gets sold as much as it does is to make money, okay? We call them drug dealers. If we legalize it, this is the money that in many ways was fueling economies within inner cities. Because there was no other money coming into it, because it was a lot poor, destitute, unemployment, no way to get to a job even if they got it, situation. Would that actually stop the crimes of that type of crime in the area, or would they just move on to other things?
I mean, it's hard to say, but what we've seen from Colorado is that Denver did have a crime decrease. Their crime rate did decrease within the city. So, I mean, I can't give too many hypotheticals. I don't understand the illegal market in Buffalo completely, so I can't really speak to that 100%. But what I've seen from, states that have legalized is that their crime rates have dropped. And what you also have to think about is that because it is an illegal market, you can't call the police when somebody steals from you, so you have to arm yourself.
Right.
And, so you're supplying the arms trade now. They're probably not buying registered weapons. I mean, think about that. So, I mean, you're also funding other illegal trades by just allowing this illegal trade also.
For the record, everyone listening, every time he comes in here, Anthony's always made me stop and have to think. And the fact that I had to get him to stop just for a second there is a win for me. This is what I mean. I love having him come in because it's actually a very intelligent conversation.
But if you do look at the border, that's a huge issue, is because we do have a lot of drugs coming into the country from Mexico. I mean, this is not something that I'm making up, and they've actually seized less cannabis from the border. It was about 4 times less since 2010 to 2014.
Oh, wow.
So, I mean, it's definitely having an effect.
Cool. Let's see here. Well, there's the only reason why I don't want to necessarily go over the medical side at this point in time is because there is a lot more information coming out now on that. And, on the medical side, I think it's a whole different ball game in a sense of the what, why, or why not?
Well, let me give you an example of why it's not different, because I have a friend who's a lawyer who actually has a client that was caught with over an ounce, and this gentleman has malignant tumors, so he was arrested, and this is someone who could benefit from cannabis, but because he doesn't technically have cancer, which is a qualifying condition on the list of 10 conditions, he's being arrested and being treated like a criminal.
Okay.
When the state knows that people are seeking benefits from cannabis for the pain associated with tumors and cancer, but yet we still continue to penalize these people. And yeah, he'll get off with an ACD, but what is he going to do when he's on the ACD? He's going to continue to self-medicate because he doesn't want the other medications that cause a plethora of other negative side effects, so he could still be caught and still, face even worse time because he's on an ACD.
Quick ACD?
Adjournment contemplation dismissal. It's usually it's a condition that judges set, so it can range from 6 to 12 months where you cannot break the law, or else the original case that they had given that ACD for it comes back up.
Okay.
So you can either get a dismissal, and that case doesn't come back up, it's been completely sealed by the judge, or you get the ACD, or you get jail time or probation. So there's different options that a judge can choose.
Okay. Let's move on to a few other topics here, because not that we could probably go on for a couple hours on this one, but I'm just trying to think of some of the other things you talked about. You mentioned education.
Yeah, absolutely. We're starting to talk about receivership in Buffalo. We're talking about putting public schools under state control, which is starting to take away control from the parents and the local communities. And a lot of the times, some of the state funds go to charter schools, which are owned by hedge fund managers a lot of the times. And I think that we need to keep the public money that we raise through property taxes, keep that into the public schools. If a charter school wants to exist, that's completely fine, and same thing with private school, but they shouldn't be getting public tax dollars. That's not fair, because they're not held to the same standards that the state puts on the public schools as the charter schools.
What if they were held to the same standards? Would you still want it to be separate?
I just don't think that they should get public funds.
So basically you feel that charter schools are inherently private and should be treated as just a normal private institution?
Yeah, they should. They absolutely should.
The other private schools around here, like Nichols and the Saints.
Yeah, the Catholic schools.
Yes. Just to group them all into one, call them the Saints. Let's see here. You also mentioned... Well, go ahead.
Yeah, the environment for sure.
Yes.
The environment's huge.
You and the environment? No.
Being in the Green Party, we definitely care about the environment.
Yes, and actually, let me think about this here. How do I want to word this one? We'll start with, now the Green Party has actually been doing better, which doesn't mean that they're necessarily getting 80-90% of the vote or anything like that, but they're getting 80 to 90% more votes than they've had in previous years.
We do actually have a few who are in office. Now they're very local,
Okay.
it's like a comptroller or, a few council members. But still, we are starting to see a point where third-party candidates are not a joke. Mm-hmm. We're serious. And if you look at a poll put out by Rasmussen, 67% of Americans in that poll want a third party. And they're not being represented by the Democrats or Republicans. And, it's time for people to look at the fact that we have more than two choices. And you cannot divide 314 million Americans into two camps. You can't do that. It doesn't make any sense.
Now, what in particular, what is your hottest button on the environmental side right now?
I think that a lot of the times minority communities are put in geographical locations that are detrimental. They call it environmental racism, and I do agree with that, because if you look at the communities that are being affected by most of the environmental impacts, it is minority communities. We've gotten to the point where we've accepted climate change is real and that we need to do something about it.
Well, a portion of us have. There's still some that don't believe it.
Some, but not the majority. There's always some who believe something. There's some who don't believe the Holocaust that ever happened.
Yes. So yeah, as you were saying.
Yeah. So the majority of us have accepted the fact that we need to do something about our environment, or else we're going to see changes in the environment, severe changes, and we may have to relocate out of certain areas because of flooding or severe storms. But you'll notice that, during these transitions to get away from these severe disasters, it's usually minorities who are in the communities left when the weather turns for the worst.
Well, I mean, in many cases, it's because, that's the area or the lands that were sold cheaply. So if you're low income, but you still want to have a house because that's the American dream, that's where you're going to You're going to not propagate, move to. You're going to go into that. You go to where you can afford, and there's a reason why there's and I guess that's something I've always said. And I'm not a big, and I don't want to necessarily call out Aldi's in any way, shape, or form because I don't know. Okay, I have nothing to base it off of, but I always look out and say there's a reason why things cost less than other things. Yes, sometimes the markup is due to a label. We all know this, but you start looking at averages and you wonder, why is this house, 10 grand when the same size house over here is like 80, and they could be both in the same rough shape or even good shape. It's usually because of, location and what's there. And, this is one reason why annoyance of mine is people looking for the magic bullet that's going to fix everything. Well, if we got rid of that rock and roll music and the devil worshiping that it causes, then everything will be... No. I have as many friends... on the right and on the left that are for, being able to have firearms in some way, shape, or form. Okay? They don't see that's, they don't believe that guns in and of themselves are the magic bullet to solve crime or to stop crime or murder or anything like that. But yeah, and that's, going back to your statement, yes, you see a lot of minority groups. They're in these areas that are being hit by, let's look at Flint.
Look at Haiti. I mean, you just look at... I mean,
I'm sticking to the U.S. because
yeah,
Haiti has other issues.
Yeah, Haiti has a lot of other issues. And I mean, but it just seems that, if there's a hurricane or a tsunami, it's generally affecting minority areas. And we just don't really put that much into, having some kind of prevention against that.
Right.
And I mean, the government's job is to provide a quality of life. I mean, there is to provide the general welfare, as to say in the preamble of the Constitution. I mean, that doesn't necessarily mean that everybody gets, TAMF benefits and SNAP benefits, but it does mean that the government has a duty to provide everybody equal opportunity to become better for themselves.
Yes.
And I mean, when you have banks that redline certain districts so that those minority communities are stuck in that area where there's high pollution, I mean, that is, environmental racism, in my belief.
Now, we're starting to run, we still got time, but not a lot. What haven't we covered that's on your platform that you'd like to give a little bit more detail about?
Well, I mean, I'm mostly focused about cannabis. That is my major issue. It's what I know the most about because it ties into criminal justice, and I study law. It's something that I have a deep passion for. So a lot of the other issues I care a lot about and know a lot about, but it's just that I may not have the exact fine-tuning for. So it seems like cannabis is the biggest issue for me, and it does reach into all the sectors of society too that I do care about. Like I said, the environment, you could grow hemp and remediate the soil. I mean, that's a huge thing. We're talking about the Huntley plant. They're leaving behind fly coal ash. I mean, that has, concentrations of mercury. It has concentrations of lead and cobalt. And actually, they found in the National Institute of Health, a study that was done in 2014, that cannabis can be grown as a phytoremediation technique, and it actually does pull out concentrations of lead out of the soil because the roots are very, very deep and they're very wide. They have a wide space underground that they take up.
So if we can get rid of the plant, legalize cannabis, we can use that area as a farm to clean up the toxic leftovers from the company?
I mean, you're pretty much saying it for me.
Okay.
I mean, we have grain silos. We could throw the hemp seeds in the grain silos and press the seeds into a biogasoline. I mean, there's so many things that we could do with leftover properties of Western New York that are dilapidated, and we just sit there and say, oh, we're just going to let them sit there.
Got it. Well, it's 3:55. I have to give the sports guys a chance to get in here. Yeah, because we hit our sports block here for
And
next few
concussions
hours.
are a big issue too, where now there's a football player that's been donating money for cannabis research for concussions too.
Oh, there you go. So you can tie it. Need to get you in the sports, guys. But well, thank you very
Thank
much
you.
once again for coming in here. Sorry we didn't have more time. We will have to at least get you in again. I know that you're a part of a lot of different organizations. You're a part of a lot of different organizations. Now you mentioned that 420. There's going to be a. Go ahead. You say it again.
Yeah, we'll just be having some music. We're going to have some food trucks come down. We're going to be having some tables with information. Hopefully some other organizations will come down so that they can make their voice heard to a community that's not always necessarily politically engaged.
Right.
We're going to be just sitting down there having a good time, talking about the laws and the fact that we need to make some kind of change.
And which organization is that one that's actually sponsoring that?
Yeah, the Buffalo Cannabis Movement will be presenting
Okay.
the 420 Freedom Fest at Delaware Park on April 20th, which is a Wednesday from 4 o'clock to 8 o'clock. And we'll have music and even a drum circle. So, bring a drum down, bring your sign down, bring your passion down.
And any other organizations got anything coming up over the next month? No? Okay. Well, everybody, I'll just have just remind you that April 19th, which is coming up quick, obviously the day before, is our primary. And then, of course, come election day, if you are in the right district, consider Anthony Baney for you have to tell me again.
Yeah, Assembly in District 140.
There you go.
And definitely vote in the primary because the primaries can be off by a couple votes sometimes.
Yes. Oh, yes. The primaries are very. I don't know if you heard me going off on the fact that people just need to vote in general. Doesn't matter. I don't care because that's how budgets get determined and how many polling places are opened and how well they're staffed based on the votes from the previous primary. So as long as more people continue to vote in the primary, we won't run into situations like they come up in Arizona and Utah and places like that. Anyhow, I am going to toss on some tunes. You've been listening to Mike and Mike, 91.3 FM WBNY. I will be back again next week from 2:30 to 4. But coming up next, I do believe it's Buffalo Blitz. Yep. And we're shouting, and I know the music's going on, a little loud. Hold on a second. See you next week, and we're going to sign off for Buffalo Blitz. Later.